Hello and welcome to Hello Neighbor. Today we have as our guest Bianca Mauro, who is a 7-year-long resident of Lowell, and she's had a very varied career doing many things. And I'm so excited to have her on to get to know her a little better. So welcome, Bianca.
Hi, Wendy. Thank you so much for having me.
Sure. So let's just start at the beginning. And tell us where you grew up and what your family was like.
So I grew up, I like to say, all around Massachusetts. My mom and dad lived in separate houses, and my dad was the kind of guy that flipped houses before it was cool. So we had a lot of different residences around Massachusetts. I spent most of my weekends as a kid, helping him refurbish homes and prep them for sale. So I lived kind of all around Massachusetts. My mother lived in Weston and Waltham, and I ended up going to school in Dedham.
Oh, okay. Wow. So is that where you learned your carpentry skills?
I wouldn't say that I have carpentry skills, but that, it probably had an influence, on both my unwillingness to stay put and my passion for solving problems and fixing things. A lot of that could probably be credited to something that far back. My high school was also amazing at indulging in my ridiculous ideas of building things and problem solving. So I have a lot to thank them for.
Was that Dedham High School?
I was Noble and Greeno in Dedham.
Oh,
so
okay.
They're known. They back then they were known a lot more as a sports school. I was not a sports person whatsoever. However, they did have an incredible visual and theater arts program there as well, which I took full advantage of.
Great. And who was in your family? Did you have siblings?
Not until I was almost 17. So I grew up as an only child, and then my dad's current wife, who's been his longtime partner and has always been in my life like a second mom, they called me one day when I was 16, and I remember my dad saying, "I hope you're sitting down." And that was when he told me that I was no longer going to be an only child.
Oh.
So my little brother is, roughly 16 years younger than I am. And we have never coexisted in the same house at the same time because I had primarily moved out by the time he was born.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So let's move forward. So you grew up all over the place. And then where did you go to college?
So I went to BU. I went to the Scenic Design Conservatory at the Huntington Theater. So I took my theater dreams from high school, and I took them with me into college, and I did a lot of art history and scenic design. And then about 2 years into my degree, the mentor, the professor that I had gone to BU to study under, got an incredible offer to leave and go to Broadway. And unfortunately, there was some unrest in the program after that. And BU was nice enough in the end, when it all shook out, to let me leave that program, but transfer basically all of my credits into something that would still allow me to graduate on time, which, as it turns out, was advertising communications.
Oh.
So it was an interesting ride.
Wow, that's great. So then after school, is that when you started touring with bands?
So that all started sort of in concert with going to college. So between high school and college, I, like every 18, 19-year-old, is trying to figure out how they're going to make money and while they're going to school. What are you going to do for a job? How are you going to support yourself? So I tried a lot of things. I tried retail jobs when I was a teenager, and that's fine, whatever. I did some scenic work. I was an EMT for a while. And then a roommate I was living with said something to the effect of, did you know that if you, go to an arena at night, you can talk to the folks who are there, like pushing boxes, and, they'll pay you X number of dollars an hour to help load the shows out or load the shows in, depending on your schedules. So, you know, within a few days of that, that's what I did. I went with someone who was already doing that, you know, got introduced, and started in the entertainment industry at what I like to call, like, not the bottom of the ladder, but the thing under the ladder. So, so I worked every opportunity that I could. No job was too small or too gross. And I spent every time that I wasn't studying or in school, working gigs. So it started with off of things like pushing road cases. It progressed very glamorously into stuff like rolling up the carpet after a Cisco food show. Anything from pipe and drape to putting, you know, table dressings on for other trade shows, corporate stuff, music festivals. I mean, you name it. And at some point in my early career, I had to do it for one reason or another. And that went on.
How long did you do that sort of stuff?
What's that?
How long did you do that sort of stuff?
A long time. So I started doing that. I did that all through college. I worked my way sort of up the ladder. And at some point in there, I was starting to lead crews for some of these companies. And then I was starting to book calls for some of these companies. And then I was put in charge of some large crews at stadiums for some of the touring acts that came through. And through doing that and through meeting a lot of people and through working my butt off for very long hours every single day, I made some allies in the industry, and a few folks, you know, offered me better and better positions. And then I took one that was on the road as a scenic carpenter. And it wasn't that I had any carpentry skills. Scenic carpenter has pretty much nothing to do with actual carpentry for the most part. And it's more about being with the team that builds, like, loads in and loads out these massive stages and sets on a daily basis. So I began doing that, and then it was a whole new ladder to tackle in the touring industry. Once you leave the local industry and you go on the road, it's a different beast, and you kind of start all over again. And I spent about 10 years on that ladder as well.
So you weren't with a specific band or group. It was with a company that hired you out.
No, I always worked as an independent. So I was always hired directly by the bands or by the band support teams, or by the production managers. And I worked as an independent the entire time I was on the road. So I would be with a specific act for anywhere from 3 months to 12 months, 18 months, depending on the contract. So some were short stints, some were long, and some repeated. You know, you'd work with the same artist for a year, and then they'd take a break and you go work for somebody else. And then when their schedule picked back up, your primary artist, you'd go back to them. So it was a dance of uncertainty, but it was really valuable in learning everything that I could to become a well-rounded professional, which was always my goal.
And what was your favorite band to work with?
Oh, geez. It always comes back to, like, this question, weirdly. So I worked with a lot. There were a lot of good people and good bits. Usually, sometimes it all trickles down from the top, and if you've got really solid people at the top, it all kind of comes together. And sometimes that has nothing to do with it. You just are with a really solid road crew. But I do have to say that one team and one crew and one artist kind of became my family over that 10 years. And that was working with Michael Bublé, his band, and our associated crew that was out with them. They became my family.
That's great. So how did you get to Lowell, and why did you pick Lowell?
So I was flirting with the idea of coming off the road and transitioning what I do into a role that would serve the arts and culture community closer to home. And as I flirted with that idea, I began spending longer periods of time not on the road. And when a band would take a break, instead of hopping on the next thing just for the sake of hopping on it, I'd stay home for a few weeks. And I settled in Medford for a while. in a great community down there, a lot of good friends, wonderful place. But the reality is that the price per square foot was astronomical. So I had some friends who had just moved up to Lowell, and I came up to visit them, and we walked around, and I saw all the art galleries and the coffee shops and the size of the downtown, and met some people, just really great conversations and a few great experiences. And I thought this might be a great place, for me to financially reestablish myself and my business. And also a great place where I could feel almost instantly connected to the arts and culture community here.
I think that's very true. It's very easy to get involved. People are so friendly, and there's so much going on.
Mm-hmm.
So what is your company? What do you do?
So my company that's existed since I came off the road, so about 5 years now, is BRM Production Management. And our focus is to provide management and logistics to large-scale art installations, placemaking ventures, and arts and culture festivals.
Wow. So are you working mostly in Boston at the big convention centers, or where do you mostly do your work?
So most of our work is outside because it's festivals and placemaking and public art. A lot of our work is in Boston, mainly because you follow the funding. So that's where a lot of our work is. We have a large placemaking experience out on City Hall Plaza in Boston called the Patios. We've done about a dozen public art sculptures, murals, and installations around the city of Boston and nationally. We have a few international clients that we manage their art installations worldwide. And here in the city of Lowell, we do a lot of pro bono work.
So do you have a staff, or is it just you and hire as you need?
It's a combination of the two. So there is a core group of 3 plus me. Those are the 3 project managers. It's really 2 project managers and a technical director, and then me. And then beyond that, we work with a very tight network of some contractors and independent contractors that are hired on an as-needed basis for the project at hand.
Okay, so let's move on to the Kinetic sculpture race, which just takes over the city, and you've already done it 3 times, I believe. 4 times. Oh, 4 times. And I know it started in Northern California. How did you get the idea to bring it here?
So I cannot take credit for the original thought to bring it here. So Michael Roundy, who is the co-founder of the race and a arts professor at UMass Lowell, I met through a friend of a friend in 2015. And I was fresh off the road. I just moved to Lowell, made a handful of friends, and one of them, like I said, was a mutual friend. So I'm hanging out at Brewed Awakening Coffee House, which has become my office away from office, or my coffice, which is my coffee shop office. And I'm hanging out there, and this mutual friend says, "Hey, I want you to meet a friend of mine. He's got an idea." And what Michael described to me and showed me videos of was the California Kinetic race. And that was pretty much where his inspiration sort of came to a halt. Was he knew he wanted to do this thing, but had no experience producing an event of that size. So I was sort of in the right place at the right time for me professionally. I had some great projects on the horizons with some great clients, but I still had some time in my schedule. And I thought that not only would this be great for me professionally and something fun and wonderful and a chance to engage some vendors and some artists and a lot of people in the community, but also that Lowell itself was a pretty idealistic staging ground for something like this for several reasons. One, the STEAM component. And if you think of Lowell, you think of 2 things. I think of 2 things. I think of arts and culture, and I think of the universities and the academia power within Lowell. And when you combine those 2 things, you get that STEAM component of science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics. And beyond that, Lowell is known for having these great enriching festivals. folk fest, things that have gone on for years and years. So you know that this community embraces the kind of creativity and innovation that brings people out on the streets, participating in local businesses, brings in people from outside Lowell. In addition to that, it had the physical features needed for the race. We've got the river for the water component. We're able to build a mud pit over in the parking lots at Lot A. We've got the cobblestones. There are a lot of things that make it it set the stage for the Kinetic race to be successful here. And on top of that, Lowell is so engaged with its arts community that it is somewhere that you can push the boundaries without bureaucracy stifling the creativity. So it is easier to get things done in a mid-sized city that are new and potentially very weird than it is to do in a larger city that might be more self-conscious about the choices that it makes.
So the city was really very encouraging and embraced the whole idea.
The city was split. There were folks who were very encouraged and very eager to help us, bring this race for the first time and see what it could do. And there were definitely a handful of folks that looked at me like I had three heads when I said I want art sculptures to race a 7-mile course throughout downtown. So I think at this point, however, this year would have been our 5th year. I think at this point, people see the value in it. We've also partnered with a lot of academic institutions, universities, after-school programs, Boys and Girls Club, the STEM Academy at the Rogers School. So we've tried to get as involved with the community as possible because this race isn't about the organizers at all. We are merely creating and setting the stage for the builders and the racers and the volunteers and the performers to have somewhere to show off how beautiful the intersection of STEM and the arts can really be.
Well, I know because LTC has been involved in the race for a long time, it takes an incredible amount of planning, and that seems to be your forte, which is great. Now tell us, you're also on the board of the Cultural Council.
Yes.
But before I go there, I just wondered, is your business like totally gone now with the pandemic?
So I'm literally sitting here trying to be like upbeat Bianca. And with every sentence that you and I have said so far, there's almost like just something in the back of my throat. Wendy, this is terrible. So imagine, and I'm going to say some stuff, but know that I am one voice in a sea of tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of small business and arts and culture and entertainment and event voices. So I don't speak for the whole community. I speak just for me, but I know that I'm not alone. Imagine working your whole life since you were out of high school on one dream, and that was to, create amazing arts and culture experiences, whether it's music, public art, placemaking, to work in the realm of people gathering together to have a collective experience and that may change them emotionally or intellectually. Imagine that is your passion and you've worked for 20 years to create a business that contributes to that in some way. And then in early March of 2020, you watch your entire ethos evaporate in the span of a week. Within, the second to third week of March, my company alone lost 95% of our 2020 contracts. The way that events of that scale work is that even if we get to a point where we've got some sort of green light, the bands are being lifted in a stage by stage process. We're doing that dance of seeing if we can come back out of our homes. It will still be 6 to 8 months before companies like mine begin to see any revenue. So whatever it is, whenever that green light begins to happen, that soft light that lets people begin to come out of this state that we're in now, there will still be a significant lag on the events community because of the planning it takes to create successful events. And because we don't want to be at the forefront of another peak in this virus. People want to be careful. We don't want to contribute to the problem. And so as much as we're hurting and as much as we're starving right now, we are all very conscious that there is something much bigger than us that we need to be cognizant of. And no one in the arts, culture, and entertainment industry is suggesting jumping the gun at all. But to say that this isn't heartbreaking and painful and making a lot of us question our identities because we're so emotionally involved in our work, I'd be lying to say that this wasn't the hardest time that most of us have ever gone through.
Very well said. I think many industries will come back. The arts community was always so fragile. I think it's going to take longer. And also people are going to be scared about getting together for quite a while. So I think many artists are going to really have a hard time. Hopefully there will be bailouts. I know there are already starting to be some, but it's not going to keep the arts community going.
That's a whole other conversation you and I could have.
Yeah. Wow. Well, when did you get on the Lowell Cultural Council, and what are they thinking about during this time?
So a lot of what I just said is echoed in the council as well. I have been on the council since 2017, I believe, but I have a really fuzzy timeline sometimes. So I'm sure there's someone out there going, no, it was this date. But let's just call it 2017. I joined the council because I wanted to get closer to, actually being able to affect change in the arts and culture community here. So not just working on it from the outside, but I wanted to work on it from the inside as well.
What change did you want to make?
I want to make it even more inviting for people to push the creative limits here in Lowell. So I want to find ways to not only be more inviting for that creativity, for that out of the box thinking, but I simultaneously have an inclusion agenda. And I'm really passionate about having events of all kinds be inclusive and accessible for all. So I went onto the council with those two things in mind and have really, really loved the time that I've gotten to spend with the council itself and being a part of the grant process for the LCC. And it's all been incredibly fulfilling. Now,
I've noticed, I just want to interject here that the council is very diverse, and that doesn't happen just on its own. And so the council must be really committed to getting all voices in Lowell heard.
Incredibly so. And we wouldn't be that way without our chair, Maxine Farkas, who is constantly committed to being, fair and open-minded and inclusive and educational. And it is, it's within that framework that we're allowed to do the work that we do. And it's wonderful. But like I was about to say, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, do you think that Cool will have a role to play in helping the arts community bounce back?
I can't really speak to the status of Cool. I don't know necessarily where things are right now. I know they are rebuilding, and I sincerely hope that that they get their seat at the table in rebuilding the arts community here, because I think they have a lot of important things to say, and I fully support their new leadership, and I really look forward to seeing on the other side of this what Cool is going to be reborn to be.
Cool has been reborn so many times. Hopefully it will bounce back. And the Cultural Council funds all sorts of events and exhibitions and workshops in the city. And I know that probably a lot of things were delayed, but they will continue to go forward.
Yeah, It's been complicated, a lot of which we're working with the MCC very closely to figure out how to even vote at a time like this. Because we can't make decisions, nor should we, without a quorum, without voting. So we're working very closely with the MCC. We're being very conscious of how to be fair. And our main priority is to make sure that our artists and our grantees remain motivated, that they are made whole from expenses that they've already incurred, and that we are there to support them in an educational and informational and even emotional capacity in the coming months, to give them the best chance at bouncing back.
Well, say this pandemic does end and gradually people get back together. What do you see for the future of Lowell and the arts community? Do you think it's going to keep expanding with the new Justice Center opening? There's going to be a big influx of new people coming in very soon. What do you see for the future of Lowell?
I would like to see some more time spent on the downtown. I feel like we had this moment in 2016. There was this bright, glittery moment, and I can't really describe it in its exact terms, but there was this beautiful moment where Lowell's priorities really seemed to be well balanced. There was a balance of, economic priorities, there was a balance of small business priorities, and there was a balance of arts and culture priorities. However, I feel like over the last several years, that has shifted to more of an economic priority. And while I can't fault anyone for wanting to ensure the future stability of our city, I feel like we need to shift our focus back a little bit and think smaller and address some of the problems, like all of the empty storefronts downtown. Address, some of the small business struggles that are happening right now. There are so many small businesses in Lowell that are so heinously affected by what is happening right now that it goes beyond just the arts and culture community. And Lowell is the foundation of Lowell is small business. That's what makes it so attractive to entrepreneurs and to students, and makes it that hub for innovation. And if we lose a large percentage of these small businesses, then we're going to lose the soul of our city.
Do you think that municipal government can really make that much of an impact?
I do. I think that it's tough for municipal government to make a strong financial impact alone. They literally can't just go giving away money. And I understand that. It is a limited resource, and their budgets are made, in the prior fiscal years, and no one's budget was prepared for what's happening right now. That would be completely unrealistic to expect. However, I think that from a support standpoint, I think there are a lot of things that municipal government can do. They can step in and say that they are speaking for the small businesses, that they are behind the small businesses, that they're listening. Virtual town halls, idea sessions, brainstorming, how to help the downtown. And instead of giving money away, which they can't really do, they can do other things, in-kind stuff. They can release some restrictions on small businesses, which they have been doing. They can lower the expectations of some stuff. Anything to help the small businesses get a leg up. I think that municipal government absolutely can step up and show their support in ways that aren't giving money away or making the financial crisis worse.
Yeah, I think that's very true. Well, we, believe it or not, have run out of time. And I want to thank you so much for coming on. And I'm sure when all of this stuff opens up and LTC opens its doors again, we'll be seeing more of you. Thank you so much.
I certainly hope so. And it's been wonderful to see your face, Wendy. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. And see you next time on Hello Neighbor.